My parents are world famous. My brother is an idol adored by millions, and for 3 years I pretended I was just another ordinary student. No one noticed. That lie worked perfectly until my classmates decided my parents didn't exist at all. At school, I was quiet on purpose. I never talked about my family, never showed off, never caused trouble. I studied, went home, and repeated the same routine every day. I wanted a normal life, even if it meant being invisible. But somewhere along the way, silence turned into permission. Permission for people to laugh at me, pity me, and eventually insult me. The rumors started small, then they got cruel. Today was the school's open house, and as usual, I was alone. Mia, my homeroom teacher, Mrs. Gable, said sharply as I stood in the office. "Why? Aren't your parents here again? Did you even tell them about the conference?" "I did," I answered, keeping my voice low. "They're busy." Busy, she crossed her arms. "They've been busy for 3 years, not one conference. Not one open house. I don't believe that." I didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell her the truth that my parents wanted to come so badly it almost hurt, and that I was the one who kept stopping them. I looked past her desk without meaning to. Her computer wallpaper was a glamorous stage photo of Monica, the legendary pop diva who had dominated the music industry for over 20 years, sold-out tours, endless awards, a voice everyone recognized instantly. My mom, next to her keyboard, was a glossy magazine. On the cover stood Julian Reed, calm and confident, eyes sharp with the kind of presence that filled movie theaters. The only actor in history to win Best Actor 3 times in a row. My dad. As if fate wanted to mock me, excited whispers drifted in from outside the office. "Did you see Sean's performance last night? He's unreal. How is someone that handsome even real, Sean? The top idol of his generation, chart-topping songs, endless fan chants. My twin brother, if my family showed up at this school together, it wouldn't be an open house anymore. It would be a disaster. Fans would flood the campus, teachers would panic, classes would shut down. I'd never have peace again." Mrs. Gable sighed, her expression softening. "Mia, I don't know what's going on at home, but you're an excellent student. Your parents would be proud of you. Please ask them to come next time." I nodded. "I'll try." When I walked back into the classroom, Chloe's laughter hit me instantly. "Well," she called out loudly. "Let me guess, your parents ditched again." A few students snickered. "Do they even care about you?" she added, tilting her head. "Or are they just too embarrassed to show up?" Chloe was pretty in an obvious way. Perfect hair, heavy makeup, expensive clothes. She hated that I existed quietly, and still got compared to her. I ignored her, but she leaned closer, lowering her voice just enough to sting. "Maybe your dad's some miner stuck in the mountains," she said with a smirk. "Still your dad though. Even poor people deserve kids, right?" The rumor started months ago when my teacher once called my father while he was filming in a remote mountain area with terrible reception. Chloe took that one detail and turned it into a full story. I looked at her calmly. "By the way," I said, "have you noticed your face looks a little rounder lately?" She shrieked, instantly pulling out a mirror, completely forgetting about me. I packed my bag and left. At home, the scene couldn't have been more different. My mom lay on the couch with a face mask on. My dad flipped channels lazily. Sean sprawled on the floor with a game controller in his hand. "Busy, huh? Conference over?" my dad asked dramatically, sighing like he was in a tragedy. "It breaks my heart. I just want to attend my daughter's school events like a normal father. Please, don't act," he said. "You've won enough awards already." Sean glanced over. "Sis, be honest. Are you ashamed of us?" "I'm protecting my peace," I replied. "And my future." My dad laughed, then casually said, "Arthur Chen called. He wants you as the lead in his new movie." "No," he answered instantly. "I'm focusing on school." My mom smacked his arm. "Let her get into a good college first." The next day, the school buzzed with excitement. Director Arthur Chen's team was coming to scout students. Girls rushed to prepare auditions. I stayed in my seat studying, until Mrs. Gable asked me to deliver some documents to the auditorium. Inside, Chloe stood surrounded by classmates, glowing with pride. "Director Chen praised me," she announced loudly. "That 5th supporting role is basically mine." When she saw me, she crossed her arms. "What are you doing here? I thought you looked down on the entertainment industry." "I'm delivering documents," I said. She laughed. "Sure, but don't get your hopes up. Someone like you doesn't stand a chance, Mia." A familiar voice interrupted. I froze. Arthur Chen stepped forward, eyes lighting up. It really is you. I haven't seen you in years. The room went silent. Chloe stared at him, then at me. Director Chen. You know her. Of course, he said warmly. Her father is my. I shot him a look. My longtime collaborator, he corrected smoothly. We've worked together for years. Relief spread through the crowd. Chloe straightened. Director Chen. I hope casting stays fair. That role shouldn't go to someone just because of connections. Arthur burst out laughing. The 5th supporting role. Mia would never take that. I've begged her to be my lead actress for years. She's always refused. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the room. And just like that, my quiet school life began to crack. After that day, nothing at school felt the same. The whispers followed me down the hallway, the looks lingered, a little too long, and even teachers started watching me more carefully. No one dared to say it outright. But everyone knew something about me didn't add up. Chloe did her best to control the narrative. She told anyone who would listen that director Arthur Chen only knew me because my dad worked behind the scenes in film production. That explanation spread fast, and I didn't correct it. If people were already acting this strange over a crew member's daughter, I didn't want to imagine what would happen if they knew the truth. A week later, the school announced the arts festival. This year's theme was Fashion Week. Each class would put on a runway-style show using donated outfits, and Chloe, as the class arts representative, immediately took charge. She assigned roles, criticized everyone's ideas, and acted like the entire event would collapse without her guidance. Most people bit their tongues and let her have her moment. Then the weekend storm hit. By Monday morning, the first-floor storage room was flooded. Every outfit our class had prepared was soaked, stained, and completely ruined. When Chloe saw the damage, she exploded, shouting at anyone nearby and blaming everyone except herself. She said our class would become the school's biggest joke and that this embarrassment would follow us all the way to graduation. Yelling wasn't helping. I checked the time and said calmly, "We still have 3 hours before rehearsal. We can fix this." Chloe laughed bitterly and asked me how exactly I planned to magically produce high-fashion clothes in 3 hours. I hesitated, then admitted that I might be able to borrow some clothes from my mom. The room went quiet for a second before Chloe sneered and said my mom's clothes would probably make us look like grandmothers. A few classmates, desperate and stressed, argued that old-fashioned was better than nothing. I told them honestly that my mom had plenty of clothes, but they were expensive, and I worried they'd be too much. Chloe rolled her eyes and bragged that the ruined outfits were last year's Balenciaga, asking if my mom even owned anything like that. I shook my head and said no, explaining that my mom mostly wore custom pieces, haute couture. No one fully believed me, but no one had a better plan. I stepped outside and called my mom, begging her to keep things subtle. She agreed immediately and promised to send something youthful and simple. An hour later, a familiar Porsche pulled up outside the auditorium, and my heart sank. The door opened, and Sean stepped out smiling like he was stepping onto a stage. He waved and called out, "Sis, I brought clothes." For one frozen second, the entire world stopped. Then the screaming began. Students rushed toward him, phones raised, voices overlapping. Sean panicked and ducked behind the car door, shouting for everyone to calm down. He popped the trunk, shoved garment bags into my classmates' arms, waved at me, and jumped back into the car. The Porsche sped off before security even arrived, leaving behind stunned silence. A girl whispered, "He just called you sis, didn't he?" Every eye turned to me, and my mind went completely blank. Before I could speak, Chloe laughed sharply and said she hadn't realized I was that hardcore of a fan. She accused me of being one of Sean's major fan organizers, claiming that was why he called me sis, and said my dad must have used his industry connections to arrange everything. Relief washed over me. In fan culture, sis was a common term for trusted supporters. I looked at Chloe with genuine gratitude and thanked her. She seemed confused by my reaction, but continued explaining loudly that Sean and I clearly weren't related since our last names were different. I agreed quickly and said I was just a dedicated fan. The explanation spread, and although people still found it unbelievable, it was enough to quiet the suspicion. When the garment bags were opened, gasps filled the room. Students recognized brand after brand, touching the fabrics carefully, voices full of disbelief. Moan Girl froze, while holding a shimmering gown, and said she recognized it from the red carpet 2 days earlier. Monica had worn it. A one-of-a-kind custom Dior piece. My stomach dropped. I wanted to cry. I had begged my mom to be low-key. Chloe stared at me, eyes sharp, and slowly asked if my mom was actually a celebrity stylist. Before I could answer, she nodded to herself and confidently explained it all. My dad worked on sets. My mom styled stars. And that was how I knew Sean and had access to these clothes. Heads nodded around the room. The logic made perfect sense. I stared at Chloe, honestly impressed. Without her, my secret would have been exposed immediately. The festival went on without a hitch. Our class stole the spotlight, and overnight, I became someone people followed, whispered about, and questioned endlessly. They asked for gossip, connections, and favors. I smiled, answered vaguely, and counted the days until graduation. I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. A few days later, Mrs. Gable called me into her office and told me my father needed to come to school. She said they needed to discuss my college applications and mental well-being before the exams, and added casually that she had already called him. My blood ran cold. If my dad showed up normally, everything would collapse. I texted him in a panic, asking if he'd spoken to the teacher. He replied almost instantly and told me not to worry. He said he had it under control. When the class monitor ran into the room looking terrified, and said my father had arrived, I knew nothing good could come of this. I rushed to the office and froze the moment I stepped inside. Standing there was a man wearing a thick mask, oversized sunglasses, a scarf wrapped up to his nose, and a hat pulled low over his face. Even knowing it was my father, it took me several seconds to recognize him. Mrs. Gable looked uneasy but polite as she thanked him for coming. My dad nodded solemnly, listening intently, as she praised my grades and expressed concern about my stress levels. He played the role perfectly. When he finally left, Mrs. Gable patted my shoulder and told me she understood now, assuring me that she believed my father loved me in his own way. She clearly thought he was strange. That night, my dad was incredibly proud of himself, boasting that his disguise had been flawless. I told him he looked completely unhinged. He laughed and said he just wanted to be a normal dad for once, to hear about my school life like any other parent. I didn't argue. I just decided that once the exams were over, I would stop hiding. The exams ended on a bright afternoon. Kind where the air feels lighter the moment you put your pen down for the last time. Parents crowded outside the school gates, holding flowers, banners, snacks, and cameras, calling out names, and celebrating like it was a holiday. I packed my bag slowly, and walked out alone, just like I had every other time. Chloe stood near the entrance surrounded by a loud group of relatives, laughing confidently, as if the entire place belonged to her. When she saw me standing by myself, her eyes lit up with familiar cruelty. She walked over and looked me up and down. Her smile sharp. She asked if no one had come for me even today, and wondered out loud if I was some kind of secret child my parents were ashamed of. I finally looked at her properly, my patience completely gone, and told her to watch her mouth. She scoffed and said it was the truth, that my so-called stylist mom and behind-the-scenes dad were nowhere to be seen. Something inside me snapped. I stood up and slapped her, hard enough that the sound cut through the noise around us. Crowd fell silent instantly. Chloe stumbled back, clutching her face, screaming that I had hit her, and demanding to know how I dared. I looked at her calmly, and told her I had warned her, that I had stayed quiet for years so I could study in peace. But the exams were over, and I was done hiding. I pulled out my phone, called my parents, and told them I was finished, and that there was a parent meeting at school. Then, I sat back down, ignoring the whispers that exploded around me. Some classmates crowded closer, still half believing the old story, asking if I could get autographs from Monica or Julian Reed since my parents supposedly worked for them. I smiled faintly, and told them they could ask in person. Minutes later, the noise outside the gates changed. Screams rose higher and sharper, kind that only came from fans. Simone yelled Sean's name. Crowd surged. Sean fought his way through, hair slightly messy, holding a huge bouquet of flowers, his face glowing as soon as he spotted me. He ran over, handed me the flowers, and congratulated me loudly, calling me his sister without hesitation. Chloe, still red-faced, sneered weakly, and said I was impressive for using my fan connections even now. The mood shifted instantly. Fons glared at her, offended, but Sean looked genuinely confused. He asked what fan connection she was talking about, and said plainly that I was his biological sister. The world seemed to stop. Chloe turned pale, staring at him in disbelief. asking if he was serious. Sean nodded casually and explained that we simply used different last names because one of us followed our mom's surname and the other followed our dad's. He put an arm around my shoulders and said our parents were already waiting for us inside. As we walked toward the building, the school erupted into chaos. Teachers abandoned offices, parents ran in every direction, and security tried desperately to keep order. Shouts echoed through the halls as people recognized my mom and dad. Someone screamed that Monica was even more beautiful in person. Someone else yelled Julian Reed's name, like they were at a movie premiere. Inside the classroom, my parents stood calmly as teachers, and parents crowded around them in shock. Mrs. Gable looked like she was about to faint, her hands shaking as she apologized repeatedly and struggled to form complete sentences. Chloe pushed through the crowd one last time and ran straight to my dad, forcing on her brightest smile. She introduced herself quickly, bragged about her role in Arthur Chen's film and said she hoped they could work well together, since she heard he might do a cameo. My dad looked down at her with a cold expression and said he knew exactly who she was. Her face lit up in hope until he continued, calmly stating that she was the girl who had been bullying his daughter. The room went dead silent. My mom stepped forward, her voice steady and controlled, and said that even though they hadn't appeared at the school before, they knew everything that had happened and exactly how Chloe had treated me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as realization finally hit everyone at once. Simona laughed in disbelief and said I must have saved Galaxy in a past life to be born into this family. Chloe began shaking, her confidence completely shattered. She tried to laugh it off, saying she had just been joking, and that since she might work with my dad, we should forget the past. My dad smiled slightly and said that, unfortunately for her, he had spoken with Director Chen the day before, and that her role had already been recast after he learned about her behavior. Chloe's face went completely white. My mom added calmly that she had also shared a few words with people in the industry, and that with Chloe's attitude, it would be better for her own well-being not to enter that world at all. No one defended her. For the rest of the afternoon, my parents finally did what they had wanted to do for years. They listened proudly, as teachers praised my grades, my discipline, and my future plans. They told other parents about my hard work with glowing smiles. Sean stood nearby like a proud bodyguard, occasionally signing autographs when the noise got too loud. As the sun began to set, and the crowd slowly thinned, the four of us walked out together. Sean draped an arm around my shoulders. My parents held my hands, and our shadows stretched long across the ground. After years of hiding, silence, and restraint, I realized that despite all the chaos, I had never felt lighter or happier in my life. I didn't need to disappear anymore. I was just Mia, and this was my family.